So, despite my being right, yet again, the doubters and haters continue to dogpile onto me, but let's hold off on them for a few minutes, because The Legend of Heroes Trails in the Sky First Remake has officially been shown off at the latest Nintendo showcase. I'll admit I predicted this showcase was going to be mid, because if I'm honest, Nintendo showcases that aren't first party are generally middle of the road, but the last two have been absolute bangers. I covered one of the bangers in a previous video. A card for that will be popping up on screen now. I knew of this remake since the middle of 2023 thanks to my sources. I reported on it for the first time back in January of this year. People didn't believe me back then, and to them I have this to say.
Tell me when I'm telling lies!
Then a little more information came out in June of this year. I also did a video on that. Card on screen now. It was at this point I knew for sure this remake was happening, given Toshihiro Kondo's very specific wording. Albeit from what he'd said, and from what my sources had told me, I was expecting the announcement at a far later date, and the release to be much further out. Which would make sense when you consider the fact Falcom is an exceptionally small developer, given Kondo seems to want to move on with the story of Trails. With how burnt out staff members are of the franchise at present, I figured we'd see Trails in the Sky at the earliest in a couple of years. Anyways, I have a bit more information on this remake, its sequels, and a few other things. So hit the subscribe button and stick around to the end of the video so you don't miss out on anything. So for the first part of this video, I want to allay the fears of a lot of fans. People have been tripping over themselves like toddlers over the fact it has only been announced for the Switch so far. If you didn't listen to me when I said this remake was coming,
shut your damn mouth!
And listen to me this time. The game is going to be multi-platform at launch. The announcement for it on the Switch at the Nintendo Partner Showcase was basically because Nintendo pulled what Microsoft did with Metaphor ReFantazio. They paid Falcom just like Microsoft did with Sega and Atlus for marketing rights, which is just a smart business move with the modern day of gaming. Sure, exclusives matter. I've covered why in another video, so check that out if you want to know more. But since more and more third-party developers are becoming gun-shy of exclusivity deals, brands need to keep their third-party equity high by being the ones who push the marketing campaigns for upcoming video games. Basically, it's smart marketing, as it creates a demand for what developers are supplying, even if it's shady. Just look at how people reacted when Metaphor was first shown off using the Xbox branding, and it taking multiple days for it to be announced officially on other platforms. It had people actually considering buying an Xbox Series console, just so they could play it. That piece of information comes from one of my sources who initially told me about the Trails in the Sky remake being a thing. They're already correct on that. They've also given me information about Twisted Metal and Sly Cooper, which have upcoming projects as well. Don't believe me? Then
go fuck yourself.
Falcom also have extensive experience with the PS4 and 5 hardware, so it won't be that much harder for them to work on releasing it on those consoles at the same time. In fact, they're probably the lead consoles. That is speculation on my part, but keep this in mind. The engine that has powered Trails games since Trails Through Daybreak was designed for the PlayStation hardware first and foremost. Those systems also use x86 architectures, which is what powers most modern PCs, meaning the studios Falcom work with for ports and localizations would have a much easier time of things. There is also this fact to consider. The Switch is literally dying hardware at this point in time. The successor is just around the corner. So if Falcom stranded Trails in the Sky first on aging hardware, it'd put the Sky games back in the same situation they were in when they finally got localized by Xseed Games on the PSP. If you want a history on the teething troubles for the Sky games coming to the West, I'll link to the excellent documentary done by Matt McMuscles in the description. It actually explains why the West has gotten the Trails games so much later than one would expect. However, if you look at what Falcom have done recently with their partnership via NIS America and the release date for this game, you'll see they're intending on getting games to the West very quickly, which makes sense given Kondo has said repeatedly that he wants to get the release window shorter to the point, we get the games at the same time. There's also the fact the vast majority of Falcom fans are attached to PlayStation consoles or PC, meaning they really do not want to piss off their core fans by making them purchase a console they probably don't own. Sure, the Switch is cheap, all things considered, but not everyone has one, and one of the explicit goals of this remake is to ensure everyone who wants to play it can do so. It's going to be multi-platform at launch, no matter what. This is information I got from my sources as of August 28th. The second and third chapter remakes are also currently being worked on, given they won't require extensive times to develop, since, just like the originals, these are going to feature a lot of assets being reused, which ultimately is the true definition of working smarter, not harder. It's also why we often see short turnaround times between Falcom projects, because a lot of their games do reuse assets. This isn't me throwing shade at Falcom, far from it, considering I feel like developers need to reevaluate things and take on smaller projects that take less time and money to develop. On average, a game takes between 3 to 5 years to come out, which is just untenable. Insomniac Games have literally proven that. Also, games like Astrobot plus all of Falcom's catalog proves if you build games for audiences who are underfed, they will come. Astrobot is in fact one of the most wished for games on PSN at present, which makes sense given 3D platformers as a whole are almost non-existent in this day and age. Also, Crash 4 sold 5 million units. So, shut the fuck up, Crash fans. Our favorite orange marsupial isn't dead. You spoiled, skull-fucked numpties. But the second and third Sky games are actively being remade and should come out in 2026 and 2027 respectively. And I imagine Falcom is going to announce a few more surprises in the very near future, which I expect will also be localized not long after the Japanese release. For those, we'll just have to wait and see. So this part is mostly going to be my opinion. This remake is going to be a big deal for Falcom. Sure, PC users have pretty much always had the luxury of being able to play this franchise in full. Console gamers have not, which is certainly a frustration for a lot of us. But ever since releasing Zero and Azure in the West for the first time, Kondo's goals have been to make it playable for everyone, hence why releasing it as a Switch exclusive is a non-starter, as that legitimately contradicts his own statements about making the games as accessible as possible. That literally means releasing it on all platforms. But this is huge for Falcom because having all of the games available on modern hardware means this franchise, despite remaining incredibly niche, is going to finally be able to be something a bit more. Will it ever beat uber mainstream appeal? No, and that's kind of why the Trails games are so excellent. They're catering to a rabid audience that's so starved for this kind of game, they're looking like one of those kids from the sponsored kid ads we used to get bombarded with on TV. So the fact we're now well over 10 games deep, and they've been impossible to play in one place, has made an already hungry audience absolutely ravenous. So this remake is going to sell like crazy to Falcom fans, Trails fans, and of course JRPG fans. I wouldn't be surprised if it manages to sell a few million copies, which would be insane, given it took until the Cold Steel arc for this franchise to hit the millions in terms of sales. Also, since it's going to release in the West in the same year as Japanese fans get it, this will make or break Falcom in the West. Now, I'm in no way saying they'll stop releasing games in the West if this bombs, far from it. It's just a major test if the simultaneous release will work for Falcom going forward or not. From what I've heard, this will not be a same-day release for the Japanese and the West, but it will come out around 6 months later for Western fans, which, considering how Falcom have been in the past regarding script translations, is going to be a good thing. However, given it uses the XC translations, which has been confirmed, it means a lower waiting period for Trails fans as a whole. This lower wait time is also going to be a good thing, as it means Falcom fans will bitch and moan less about waiting for the games. You impatient bastards. I won't tell you to touch grass, but I'll say this. Go and play some other games in the meantime, maybe. I'm fucking excited for this release, and as soon as PS5 pre-orders go up, you know what I'm going to do. I'll let Edge butt in for a second, though, with a message for everyone who doubted me.
You were all wrong! Wrong, wrong,
Are you excited for this release? Comment below and hit the subscribe button. Thanks go out to my current channel members, R. Campbell and Danny Boy. If you want to support the channel further while getting exclusive videos and early access to others, you can do so by hitting the join button or the link in the description. Want more of my content? Then check out my video on why the Capcom Marvel Collection is a big deal, or check out one of my Falcom videos popping up on screen now. Until next time, keep blazing that trail and...
Tell me when I'm telling lies!